Hey, this is Phil, and it is not your dealer's fault that you got unlucky. So, you're playing a huge pot. You're all in on the turn for 300 big blinds, and you have top set naturally. Your opponent, he has a flush draw. 82% of the time, you're going to be taking him a big pot. I mean, that's what's going to happen. That's what's supposed to happen. But this time, the dealer burns, flips up the river, and unfortunately, it's a heart. Whose fault is that? I mean, perhaps that's a bit of a philosophical question, but the true answer is it's nobody's fault. It's absolutely nobody's fault. And if you're somebody who truly believes that that's the dealer's fault for doing something, or even though you don't believe that, you believe, this dealer's unlucky for me because that's happened twice, and then you take your frustration out on the dealer, it's entirely unacceptable, and it's ridiculous, really. The cards, while they're touched by your dealer, and maybe even shuffled by them if they're not using a machine shuffler, they have no control over the outcome of the cards. Hopefully this is obvious to almost all of you watching this, but to some people it seems not to be. And I've seen time and time again, dealers kind of take the brunt of the frustration that a player feels when they lose. Treating people poorly because of something they can't control is ridiculous in all areas of life. And this isn't unique to poker. You could be waiting in line at the airport, find out your flight gets delayed, you yell at the person at the desk who obviously didn't delay your flight. Or you could be in a restaurant, your food comes out cold. Actually, I guess if your food came out cold as possible, it would be the waiter's fault. So let's say your food comes out and it's really bad, and you yell at your waiter for something that presumably the chef did. These are all things that they happen. We've all seen them happen. It's kind of human nature to be frustrated by something and take it out on somebody. But it's really not acceptable in any of these areas. But it's actually especially ridiculous in poker because, in the hypothetical where you're at a restaurant, your food comes out and it's bad. You yell at your waiter, which you should not do. Maybe if that happens a few times, they go back and they say to the chef, hey, the last 3 times you made this dish, the customer got really upset. Now, of course, you could accomplish the same thing by just telling them politely that it wasn't that good, and not yelling at them for something they didn't do. But in that scenario, maybe the chef learned something and can actually change the outcome for people in the future. In poker, if you yell at your dealer for dealing a heart on the river, they can't tell anybody to fix that. They didn't cause it and nobody caused it because it's just randomness. Now, I kind of intended to use this video to talk to those of you who, for some reason, get upset at the dealer for bad luck. But as I'm talking, I kind of realize that I think it's really unlikely that I can change your mind. If you really either believe that they control your luck, which I think, if you believe in luck, your dealer, why does your dealer control your luck more than the guy that you passed on the street on the way in, or more than your cousin who you talked to in the morning? I would much rather people lose the hand, leave the table, call their cousin and yell at their cousin. I don't want to convince you that luck isn't a thing. If you believe that, you can believe that. And I guess believe what you want as long as it doesn't cause you to treat people poorly. So believe what you want, but let's say you believe that a dealer is unlucky. Why don't you just leave the table when they're there? Say, you know what? You don't even have to tell them that it's because they're unlucky. Say, you know what? I have a meeting. I'm going to go take a call. I'm going to call my cousin and yell at him, and then just leave and then come back 30 minutes later when that dealer's gone. Because even if you have a dealer that's unlucky, it's not their fault. I just shouldn't go down this path of this make-believe world. Whether you believe the dealer's unlucky or whether you know that the dealer is not causing your bad luck, but because of the level of like your anger issues, you can't help but take it out on somebody, and they're the natural choice. I don't know. Please don't do that. Please work on it. It's just not fair. It's just not fair to them. And, it's probably bad for you too. So anyways, that's all I'll say. I can't convince you if that's really what you believe. But what we can talk about a little bit is what to do as a player at a table when that happens. I mean, I'm a pretty naturally non-confrontational person. So it probably took me longer than it would take most people, but probably for the first 8 years of my career, I never would have felt comfortable enough to kind of confront somebody who was doing something that I thought they shouldn't. And I feel bad that that's the case. I think at this point in my career, I'm comfortable enough at the table that I would kind of do the right thing and stand up for the dealer. Because you have to keep in mind that if somebody's yelling at a dealer for no reason, or even for a reason, which is also not okay, they either can't or won't stand up for themselves. They either can't because they get in trouble. The player yelling at them is unfortunately the customer, and they don't own the business. They're employed and they have to behave appropriately. Or maybe it's something where they could say something, but now, they don't want to upset that player. They don't want to upset the table by seeming like they're rude, and then they don't get tips. It's their livelihood. So the dealer's not really in a position to stand up for themselves. And I think that, far and away, the most obvious and best thing you can do in that situation is to say, hey, it's not the dealer's fault you got unlucky, and it's absolutely unacceptable to take it out on them. A lot of these people they're not going to respond well to that, probably. And I think sometimes we don't stand up to people like that because we don't see it going anywhere good. We don't really want to start a fight, and we don't think a statement like that is going to make them say, oh, okay, you know what, I was wrong. But you don't even have to get them to admit that they were wrong. I think that even verbalizing it will make other people at the table comfortable to verbalize something like that. And I'll let the dealer know that that was unacceptable. So one of the issues, and I think most dealers are aware of this, but maybe not, is that 99 times out of 100, the player who gets unlucky yells at the dealer because they got unlucky. They're almost by definition the idiot at the table, and we all want to play with them. And a lot of people don't want to upset the person who they want to play with. And sometimes they're even, if the game is like a private or semi-private, these people are in positions of power. There are a lot of situations where, it's uncomfortable uncomfortable is the wrong word, because it's always a little uncomfortable. But it's more risky actually to stand up to the player doing it. And so let's say that you are new to poker, or you're really non-confrontational, or you're just really, really not comfortable standing up to the table idiot. But you want to do something. I think there are other things you can do. So one thing that I've done in the past when I was uncomfortable doing what I really should have done, is I've waited for that player to leave. Or sometimes I've even followed a dealer to another table because the player didn't leave during their down while they were there. And just give the dealer a nice tip, say, sorry, I had to deal with that. And that's, I actually think since I've been comfortable, I'm not even sure if I think that's the only thing I've done, because I think probably for the last several years I've been comfortable enough to stand up to a player who's being unreasonable, but it just hasn't happened. But I think something like that goes a long way, because like the financial part, I mean, it matters little. That's their livelihood. They play for tips, or they work for tips. But I think just the acknowledgement goes a long way. like many other industries, dealers' income is heavily reliant on tips. And so be aware of that. Tip what you want to tip, but keep in mind that, like a large part of what they bring home is based on tips. Even if you're not like in a position of power at the table, you're not a table captain, your behavior, everybody sees it. And so you can actually influence how people treat dealers just by tipping more often yourself, by tipping more yourself. I think a lot of times there's, especially newer players, but really anybody, you see what everybody else is doing and you kind of just copy that. And so you can actually have a lot more impact than you might think, like a lot more impact than just what you give to the dealer yourself. So what are some other things you can do if you'd like to help the dealer, you'd like to make the situation better, but you're just not comfortable for personal reasons, for poker reasons, or what have you, directly addressing or confronting the person who's being out of line? I'm generally not a fan of like offhand comments, but you can, well, that's not how luck works. You can just say that. You don't need to look at the person, direct it to them. You can just say something like that. You can tip the dealer. You don't have to say anything. You can just tip the dealer. And I actually think some of these ways that are a little more like, a show of support that is non-confrontational. I think a lot of more people will be comfortable with that. And maybe even like in some ways we'll have a little fun with that. I don't have fun like needling people, but it's actually kind of a needle to the person who's really upset at the dealer if you just treat the dealer really well. You don't even have to direct them, you confront them directly. But just like a tip to the dealer, hey, you're doing a great job. Anything like that, I think it is still a useful thing you can do. Anything that's kind of an obvious sign of support for the dealer. Because there is this kind of, there's what you're thinking, which is that this is ridiculous and this person shouldn't act that way. It's what everybody's thinking. But I think until there is kind of until somebody pierces that bubble, that it like, I don't know where I'm going with the metaphor. Basically, there is all this support behind a wall for the dealer. And if somebody can just poke a little bit through, I think then all of it gets let out, even if not verbalized. I think that a dealer can feel that, absolutely. There are other ways that people treat dealers really poorly. And again, not specific to poker, but we're talking about poker. There's always I think there's always some misogyny at the poker table. And actually this goes for players too, not just dealers. Misogyny, racism, other things that are, along those lines that are entirely unacceptable. And, once again, speaking up is the best thing you can do, but maybe there are other ways to show your support for somebody, even if you don't want to necessarily confront that person. Because again, usually the character who is being misogynistic is the same character that's getting mad at people for bad luck. It's just like, it's the same. We all have a picture in our head of who this is. It's the same person. Just showing some support, even if you don't want to or can't confront them, showing some support, I think goes a long way. And then there is, people get upset when dealers make a mistake, which again is something that I've never done. So like, it's kind of hard for me to relate to. It doesn't upset me when a dealer makes an honest mistake. And almost every time I've been at a table and dealers made a mistake, they've been very apologetic. It's clear that they felt bad. And so why would you, I don't actually, it's hard for me to relate to these people because I don't understand why you would get upset at an honest mistake, because maybe you don't. Maybe it's because I make mistakes every day sometimes, and you don't. But I don't know. If you ever spilled a little bit of water on yourself when you were drinking water, or tripped when you were walking, or sent a text, but there was a typo in it, Maybe you've never done any of those things. I don't know. I've done all of them many times, actually. But yeah, when a dealer sits there all day and deals hand after hand after hand, sometimes they're going to make a mistake. It's just normal. If you're at a table and it's pretty clear that your dealer is not trying, and this happens again at other jobs. If it's clear that they're not trying, they're not taking it seriously, they don't really care, and you want to show some frustration, all right, fine. I've never seen that happen. But let's say we take a step back, and let's say, it's not that you can't control your anger. It's not that you want to hurt them, but you want them to do a better job. They're not going to do a better job if they're being yelled at. They're already taking their job very seriously, and they're already trying. And there's a lot to focus on at a poker table. And if they're being yelled at and afraid of being yelled at, they're going to be flustered. They're going to make more mistakes. Emotions cause us to make more mistakes. So even if you're thinking about it practically, which is still just not, still not a nice human thing to do, is make people upset because you think they'll do a better job. But even if that's your angle, it's not even a good angle. You're just going to make them make more mistakes on average. Another thing is, if somebody at your table sees somebody who's being verbally abusive, throwing their cards, whatever the case may be, and they say something to that player, back them up, because as we've been talking about, that can actually be hard for somebody to do. And a little bit of backup for them, I think, really makes everybody at the table more comfortable, except maybe the person who's now been told by two people to stop being a jerk. But I think that it's easy if you're not the first one to speak up, be the second one. So as I was thinking of this video, and not even sure why it came to me, but I think maybe because it's WSOP time, and I, among other things, World Series there's a dealer shortage, and so they've actually had to hire a bunch of new dealers. And I can imagine that new dealers coming into a new system that they haven't dealt in before are going to make some mistakes. I guess that's why I thought of it. But as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about, it occurred to me that I haven't had a lot of conversations with dealers about this, and I wanted to get their perspective. So I sent out a survey and got 30 or so responses. I'm going to get to those responses and my thoughts on them in a future video, and I'm going to leave you with this for now. I appreciate you watching. I look forward to your feedback and comments on the video, and I hope that we can all treat people a little bit better. So I have never, to my knowledge, confronted somebody who was being aggressive to a dealer. Like I mentioned, early in my career, I wasn't comfortable doing it. And late in my career, it hasn't happened too much. There are a couple exceptions I can think of now. And now I'm kind of disappointed in myself that, in the past 5 years, there have been a couple times that I didn't say anything. But my wife actually she yelled at a player who was verbally abusing a dealer in an RA poker room. And she gets very upset when people treat dealers poorly. And she actually stood up and yelled at this player, which is not what I would have done. But she kind of became a hero of the RA poker room for quite a while, just for standing up for one dealer. It really does mean a lot.